I know that I'm here as a vessel or a conduit for love. Essentially, that's the purpose, is to channel universal, infinite, clear, clean, unconditional love and channel that through me and spread that far and wide. I work with high-level, very influential senior leaders, helping them first develop a foundation of inner coherence. Then that translates into coherence in relationships. Then we look at the coherence of the systems that they're responsible for. And I'm weaving these worlds together so that we can be a tide that lifts all the boats. I've brought together 12 founders of global movements fueled by love, and it's called the Center of Love Alliance, to work together to positively impact 150 million lives in the next 3 years. I am enough. I am enough. I am good enough just who I am. I am good enough just who I am. I'm enough. I'm enough. I'm enough. That was my first practice. And for the first 6 to 12 months, I didn't even believe it. But eventually, I started to believe it. And that's when my life started to change. That's when Tahlia showed up, not before. But I do wake up every morning completely convinced that the goodness and the love will continue to come together through this beautiful mycelium network that we're all a part of, and will rise to the surface. And it's what drives me every day to be a tiny part of that, and a big part of that as we are all connected together.
Hi everyone, I'm Katherine Duchek. Welcome to The Sincerely Show. The Sincerely Show is a place, it's a journey, and it's a movement. It's a movement towards lives lived sincerely human. And it's a journey. It's a journey that travels through our lifetimes with experiences of hurt, of hardship, of awakening, of finding something deeper within ourselves that we didn't know was there, and finding inside of us a calling, a life of service, a life that is committed to a kinder, more inclusive world for humanity, a world of harmony. And it's a place. It's a place of psychological safety. It's a place of belonging. It's a place of hope. It's a place of joy. It's a place of love. Welcome to The Sincerely Show. Again, I'm your host, Katherine Duchek. Let's begin. I am so happy to introduce you to our guest today, Jem Fuller. Jem, welcome to The Sincerely Show.
Katie, thank you so much for welcoming me to your show. It's an honor to be here and a joy too. Like I've just had a little snippet, a little glimpse into the world that you've created and just welcomed me into. And I'm excited. I'm happy to be here.
Well, thank you, Jem. It's an honor to have you. I've heard so much about you and so many people's lives that you have touched is just moving for me. And I know our guests today are going to feel the same way and more. Jem, let's begin. And I don't like to do the introductions. I like it when you get to introduce yourself, because I think what's magic is feeling into how every one of us thinks of ourselves or speaks of ourselves. So why don't you introduce to our guests who's Jem Fuller in a way that's authentic to you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I love this question. I've spent a lot of time in deep contemplation and introspection and thinking about this exact question, who am I? I've always been a very deep thinker. And underneath who am I, you know, we can get to what am I, which is an even deeper question. And so at the very essence of it, how I experience myself is as consciousness experiencing itself through this unique, complex biological creature, this embodied flesh and bones and blood, this meat suit that I'm inhabiting right now. So I'm very spiritual. And then the next level from that is a sense of why I'm here comes in fundamental before even who I am. And this is very personal. It's not on my website. I'm not putting it on on the brochures of my retreats that I run, but this is very deeply personal. I know that I'm here as a vessel or a conduit for love. Essentially, that's the purpose, is to channel universal, infinite, clear, clean, unconditional love and channel that through me and spread that far and wide. So that's the essential. That's how I understand myself and why I'm here. Then we start to place the layers of identity on top of that. The ways that we can be understood in relationship, because essentially we really only exist in relationship, first with self and then with others. So then when we start to put some of the more traditional layers of identity on, I'm a husband, a lover, I'm a father. I've got my two boys, my gorgeous young men who I adore, who are 22 and 20 years old, and then lucky enough to be stepfather to two other gorgeous young humans who are 19 and 16, and they came with their mum and I came with my boys, and then mum and I, my beautiful soulmate and partner, we've been together for 10 years now, and we were each other's second chance at love. We were both married for 20 years before we met each other, and then we really had this opportunity to create and experience ourselves through a very conscious relationship, which is divine. It's one of the biggest joys in my life. I am a son. My mum lives with us. She's getting on. She's got Parkinson's, and I don't want to stick her in a home, so she lives with us on the farm. We live in a small surfing community down on the coast in Australia, and it's a beautiful life with lots of nature. I'm a nature lover. I'm a brother. I'm the eldest of four. My youngest brother died when he was 30, 16 years ago. Yesterday actually was his anniversary. We can talk about that. That was one of the biggest moments in my life. So I'm a brother. I'm a friend. I'm a generous man. Like I said, I'm loving. Kindness is one of my top core values. For me, being kind just feels so good. It's such a source of living, experiencing this existence in a beautiful, enhanced way through kindness. And then we start to put on the other layers of what do I do, and there's coach and facilitator and author, singer-songwriter. I'm a musician. I'm a poet. These layers which you and I can explore together. But at the essence of how do I identify with myself, I'm a kind, generous, open-minded, loving, action-taking man. That's my sense of identity.
I think we were meant to know each other.
I think so too, because here we are right now.
Exactly. If we were meant to be somewhere else, we'd be somewhere else.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. So many things have already come up for me. I've been on many deep introspective journeys over the course of the last decade, as you've begun to get a sense of. One of them, before I left the company that I was with for 37 years, was in the month of June 2022. And I went into this ethereal place, I will say. And I went, and you set an intention before you go on these retreats. And my intention was to live a life of love and kindness, full stop.
Yes.
Because I had experienced in my coming out, through simply being vulnerable and honest about my life and my inner world, I'd experienced a level of love and kindness and support and embrace that from 80,000 people and more that I could have never imagined. And I got to see that love and kindness is available within every human being. And I said, I'm going to return it by living a life of love and kindness, full stop.
Yeah.
So yeah. You too have found the same place.
Yeah, 100%. I just know, that it's a lie that is, it makes money, and that's why news sells it, and why politicians abuse it for their own gain, that humans are nasty and mean and terrible and violent and want to hurt each other. It's a lie. I mean, yes, we are a gullible species and we're easily misled and we're easily sold bad ideas. I understand that. But the truth of the matter is that if you and I were walking down a street in a foreign land with a local person there who had been brought up in a completely different context, and the three of us were walking down the street together, maybe we have different religious or spiritual or ideological beliefs. We eat different food. We did everything. We couldn't be more different contextually and culturally. But the three of us are walking down that street, and if we see a 2-year-old child on their own, suffering, in pain, all three of us have the same feeling to go and help that child. That's human. It's just human. You know, most humans, apart from people who suffer from psychosis or you know, whatever, but most human beings wake up in the morning and just want a peaceful day and just want to get along. We don't want to hurt each other. We just want to, you know, so I know that beneath the layers of fear, there is a whole bunch of love and the desire for us to be connected with each other and to be in coherence with each other, you know. And so, yeah, anyway, you got me on a bit of a tangent there, Katie, sorry.
No, I love it. So we're going to unpack that. Give us a little more, add some flowers to this beautiful, we're going to go into your consciousness and what you are and why you are over the course of this conversation. Give us a bit more of a feel for this identity. You know, tell us about your farm, first of all.
Wow. Yeah, we're very lucky to be the custodians of this land. We don't own it, which sits well with me because that's a whole other
We don't need to own.
So my family and I, 3 generations, and we live on a big, beautiful farm. We don't run the farm, but it is a working sheep farm for wool. For wool, not for eating the sheep, but for using their warm woolly coats to make clothes. So there's a farmer who runs his sheep here. So we've got the sheep. We are in rural Australia, so we're also home for a mob of kangaroos that hop around on our property. We can see the ocean. From our kitchen, we can see the ocean and
beautiful.
And we love the ocean. We live in a small surfing community called Bells Beach. The World Surfing League, the World Surfing Tour, is currently, as you and I are recording this, is currently in our town for the Bells Beach stop on the World Tour. So Kelly Slater and the gang are all in town, which is normal for us, happens every year.
Cool.
And so the farm is a beautiful, peaceful place. Nature, being immersed in nature is a big component of my well-being, my mental, emotional, physiological health. And so I get to be here. I grew up in a city. I grew up in Melbourne in a city. But my children have grown up, in a small surfing town down on the coast, which has been great.
I live on a farm too. And the Sincerely website speaks of it because it also doubles as a creative space and retreat center.
Yes.
And it's a lavender farm.
Beautiful.
With honeybees on a sea, on
so
the water.
nice. That sounds divine.
I use the same language. I actually don't think we own anything. The only thing that is ours is our soul.
Yeah.
The only thing that is really ours is our essence or our soul. And so I consider myself blessed to be the steward of Maison Millefleur. And I look forward to finding ways to let others experience the peace and the love and the beauty that comes with such sacred places like your farm.
Yeah.
Talk to me about your bride, your partner. You describe her in the most beautiful way.
Yeah. Tahlia, her name is Tahlia. Yeah, wow. It was divine timing, and it feels to us both like our angels, our guides, were keeping us apart until we were together because it wasn't quite the right time, but we almost met throughout our lifetimes many times. We've both had very global lives, and it's interesting that your partner was right close by to you the whole time, and we were literally 1 degree of separation. The apartment that I was living in when I first became a dad, which was above a shop on one of the coolest streets in Melbourne, where there's a lot of really cool boutiques and clubs and cafes and bars, and we were living above one of the shops when my first son was born, and directly opposite us was one of the coolest hairdressing salons in Melbourne, and that was Tahlia's mum's business, and Tahlia grew up as an only child above that hair salon opposite where I was. And when I was living there, she'd gone traveling overseas and wasn't there, but she came home to visit, and she bumped into a mutual friend of ours downstairs below where I was, upstairs with my newborn son. Bumped into our mutual friend, and they had a quick catch up, and she said, "Where are you going?" He said, "I'm going up to see my friend Jem." And she said, "Oh, that's nice." And then we were at the same wedding together years before when she was a young mum with her then husband and their 2 little kids. And I was there with my then wife and our 2 little kids. And it was a small, exclusive wedding. There was only 100 people there. And we were away from the city on a property, all staying on this property. And I was sure I met everyone at the reception. I was way more extrovert when I was younger. I'm 50-50 extrovert, introvert, now ambivert. But at the time I was very extrovert, and I would go up and introduce myself to everybody. And I would have remembered if we'd met, and we didn't meet. But we're at the same wedding. And then all of the years later when we did meet, it was almost the right time for us to be together, but not quite. We were both still coming out of the ends of the marriages that we needed to come out of. We weren't supposed to be with those people forever, but we were both still married, so nothing could happen. But we met at a party, old school, like just at a friend's party, and we started talking. And when we started talking, the rest of the party just disappeared. And we went into this conversation, and we sat there for hours talking. Our kids were there. Her partner at the time was there, but we were just sitting there talking, got lost in this conversation with each other. And then at 2:00 in the morning or something, kind of realized that everyone had either left or gone to bed. We're like, oh, wow. I think we should probably call it a night. And we said good night and went off to our respective rooms. And then the next day I went off surfing with my boys, and it was like, who was that? Like, what? Anyway, so 2 years later, we'd both come out of our marriages, and our paths crossed again, and we couldn't not be together. We tried to be logical and rational and say, hey, we've both just got divorced out of 20-year marriages. Let's not go straight into something. Let's just take a breath. And we both tried to take respective breaths in our relationship life. But the magnetic force was just way too strong. We couldn't. So in the end, we just had to succumb to it and say, do you know what? We are meant to be together forever. And so we have been, and it is really truly an uplifting and an inspiring story for people who believe that true love and beautiful conscious relating is possible, but they haven't experienced it yet. And we are 10 years down the track, and I'm here to tell you it is possible. We have a beautiful conscious relationship. We have never, not once, been nasty to each other. Very, very occasionally we disagree on things, and that's fine, but we've never been cruel or mean to each other, not once. And yeah, it's divine. And so our worlds intertwine. So Tahlia, I'm chatting with you, Katie, now from my studio, which is inside Tahlia's bricks and mortar business, which is called Village Wellness. And she has a village for women and women's wellness. And so she has everyone. She's a doula and birth educator, Pilates instructor, yoga teacher, meditation teacher. And she has a whole beautiful team of women here looking after young mums all the way through to menopause, all the way through to women in their 80s and even someone approaching their 90s. And they're all, so my studio, I'm very lucky. I'm nestled in amongst all of this divine feminine healthy wisdom, and it's so lovely for me. And they love having me in here because I bring this little core functional masculine stability into the middle of the building. So Yeah, there you go. That's a little rant about my true love.
I love it. I follow synchronicities, as I've shared with you before. So I've got at least 3 guides. I call them guides because it doesn't matter whether they're a psychologist or a spiritual. I've got like 3 guides that have all said to me, "Oh, you and your like true love are going to take time. You're going to know each other, but it's going to take time for you to come together."
Uh-huh.
And I go, "Well, why? Why can't it just happen?"
Yeah.
And this is no, in soul level connections require energy, or if you go to David Hawking's vibrational scale, require the individuals to meet at similar states of consciousness or vibration in order for it to stick. And you can be slightly at different levels, yet the person needs to be far enough along that you can raise each other and continue to support each other.
Yes.
In your soul's journey, not in this mechanical traditional marriage, in your soul's journey to consciousness, to 100%. Awakening, to true love.
Yeah.
And all 3 or 4 of them have said to me, and you don't need a dating app.
Yeah.
What you need to do is go on your journey to wholeness, living from your essence, not from what you think the world told you to be, but learning to live from your essence and develop that self-love, develop that love for others, put yourself out into the world, and your person will be there at the right time.
I could not agree more.
And so your soulmate, or whatever words you call your soul twin, whatever word you and Tahlia use for your soul connection, it needed time to mature. You needed time to be ready to be together.
100%. And I'm so glad that we both are glad that we didn't meet earlier, because the timing wouldn't have been right. And the physical attraction would have been there because we both find each other very physically attractive, and that would have been there. And who knows, we might have even explored that when we were younger, but the resonance, our own frequency, our own levels of consciousness weren't ready for it to be what it is. So we're both very grateful for the timing on it.
What does this family of 4 feel like together? Now they're adults. They're like, I've got, my oldest is 27, 2 at 25, 1 at 23. So I kind of have a sense for the age that you're talking about for yours. Like, what does these 4 look like together?
They look great together now. We've been very conscious around the way we became a blended family. We didn't want to throw these kids all under the same roof because that would have been unnecessary tension for them as kids. So we kept 2 houses, and we timed it so that we were week on, week off. Both of us were week on, week off with our kids and their other parents. So in the week when I would have my boys up at the farm, Tahlia would have her girl and boy just literally down the hill, a stone's throw away from us. We live very close together. But she would have her kids down there with her single parenting. I'd have my kids up the hill with me single parenting. We'd see each other. I mean, we see each other every day, but we'd have separate houses. And then in the following week, the kids would go to their other parents for their week with their other parents, and Tahlia and I would have a week together with no kids. Yeah. So it worked really well. It was also inadvertently, over time, we realized it's really healthy for the relationship too, because we got to...
allowed it to breathe.
Yeah, we allowed the relationship to breathe, and we've always allowed ourselves to, as much as we feel that we are 2 halves of a whole, we also still have a very clear understanding of our own individuality and our own essence that we bring, which is healthy. So when the kids were younger, because when we got together, the kids were 12, 10, 9 and 7, and all 4 of the kids were going through their own version of trauma from their mum and dad separating. And Tahlia and I fell in love very, very soon after, coming out of the other relationships. So it was all very quick for the kids. the eldest and the youngest were very non-confrontational and peace, and just wanted everyone to be happy through it. The middle two, they went each other. They went to each other, and they tried to work, and it wasn't about each other. It wasn't that they didn't like each other. That's how it played out. But what it was really about was deeper psychologically, them playing out their pain and wanting to try and get me and Tahlia against each other, which never worked. And that was 10 years ago. And we've been through this beautiful journey. And for the last 5 years, it's just been gorgeous. They got sick and tired of trying to say to people, well, that's my mum's boyfriend's son. So they just started saying brothers and sister. So they call each other siblings now, which is great. Perfect. They're loyal. They'll be there for each other. They've got each other's backs. My two boys, they're fiercely protective of their younger sister, and and they've all partied together, and they're all so no, they're good. They're really good.
Well, when Tahlia and you live from kindness and love, and this ability to hold space for one another, to be whoever we need to be at a moment in time, that's a rare gift that young people get to experience.
Yeah.
When you talk about never really having hard friction, with each other, it takes a couple of fairly healed souls to be able to not be perfect, but to be able to hold space for one another and to grow up now. For the 4 kids to be able to experience this container of love and kindness is pretty special.
Yeah. It is. It really is. It means the world to me. I think one of the most important relationships to me, and one of the most meaningful roles that I've had the honor to play and still play, is the one as father, as parent. It's very, very important to most parents feel this, right? And the previous example of relationship that I was being and therefore demonstrating to my children wasn't what I wanted for them, and so for them to have a good chunk of time, that like I said, they were 12 and 10 when Tahlia and I got together. So these teenage formative years, for them to be able to live in the energy of this relationship and therefore start to embody it. And, I had this beautiful, one of those parenting moments that you wish you could just bottle and keep. And not long ago, I was noticing my younger boy, who's just turning 20 this month, and he's been with his girlfriend for 3 years, and they love each other, teenage sweethearts. They absolutely adore each other. And he treats her so beautifully. He's got the old school chivalry, but someone questioned him the other day. Actually, someone said, it's sexist of you to open doors for her. Like you're treating her like she's weak. And he said to her, excuse me, you've got no idea what you're talking about. I'm not opening the door for her because she's weak or she can't open the door. My woman is a strong woman. I'm opening the door for her because I want to show her that I love her and I respect her and I'm thinking of her and I'm putting her
He's
first.
honoring her. He's honoring
her, right? That's what he said. And then I saw him, I made a comment to him. He dropped her off home or something, and he'd come back. And I said to him, hey, Noah, I just want to let you know I'm really proud of the way that you treat Scarlett. And he looked at me and he goes, Dad, where do you think I got it from? And I just had one of those dad moments or mum moments, parent moment, where you just want to bottle it up and go, some things are working.
I think my kids like this version of me more than the old version. As we heal That's and lovely. We open our heart, our kids get to benefit from that. Jem, what I'm sitting with, and we'll segue to the outer life that you lead, and then we'll go deeper, is how raising a family or creating family and a deeply loving, gentle, supportive home is in and of itself an act of service.
Yeah.
It is of in itself an act of service, because you're giving a gift to your children and the next generation, and there probably is no greater gift to be able to allow them to experience your love and your light. let's talk about your outer world, the other acts of service in your life, the poet, the songwriter, the coach. You mentioned retreat. What are the kinds of things that you are doing in the world? Let us into that, and just let us into that part of you.
Sure. I've recently come up with the help of my friends, because we do stuff in community, but I've recently landed with a term to be the overarching title of my outer work, and it's Coherence Architect. Huh. And I love it, and the more I dive into it, with my community, and the more I share it with clients, and it feels coherent. it resonates really well with me, because it is an umbrella to really talk to all of the different aspects of my outward work. And when I say work, I love what I do. I found it, and I didn't find it until I was 42, but I found it. And
yeah, beautiful. Most people never find it.
Yes.
That's why you're doing what you're doing, and I'm doing what I'm doing, is to help people find it.
Yeah, and I will be doing this until the day I die. It's not something to retire from.
No,
you don't retire from your life's purpose. I've found my life's purpose, which is beautiful. So what does coherence look like in a way that people can understand? So bread and butter work is that I work one-to-one with high-level leaders, and so I coach. People would understand me as a leadership coach. That's where people could compartmentalize it or pigeonhole it and go, oh, you're a leadership coach. So you can use that term if you want to understand the work that I do. But I work with high level, very influential senior leaders, helping them first develop a foundation of inner coherence, so inner alignment, a place of equanimity, of calm-centeredness, of fulfillment, of alignment between the somatic, so the feeling, the somatic, the emotional, the symbolic, the mental, and the spiritual aspects of self. So I do that work with them. Then that translates into coherence in relationships. So how do leaders understand the code of human behavior, and the people that are around them, the people that they're working with, or the people that work for them? How do they understand that in a very refined way, so that they can develop relationships of high consciousness and high efficacy and alignment? So we've got coherence in relationships. Then we look at the coherence of the systems that they're responsible for. So what are the moving parts of your organization, say? If you're the CEO of an organization, what are all the moving parts professionally and personally? Because the two are not separate. You are the common denominator that shows up in every aspect of your life. And if your personal life isn't great, that's capping your ability in your professional life. It's all interwoven. So how do we bring coherence with all of the moving parts that you're responsible for? So that's the coherence architect part. So I coach leaders one-to-one. I run workshops for leadership teams. I speak at events. Yesterday I was up in the city speaking at the CEO Institute for 10 CEOs, and I was sharing with them this stuff. I run high-level leadership conscious retreats in the Himalayan mountains in India, in Bali, here in Australia. I write books. I'm a published author, award-winning author, if you want to see on the bio. That's the true bit there. I've got online courses. And so that's all the bread and butter stuff, and that weaves into my nonprofit higher mission stuff. So our nonprofit is called the Center of Love. We only had that incorporated in the States last year. And the Center of Love, the purpose of why I've created the Center of Love is, it's multi-layered. At the core of it, we're building a non-profit meditation retreat education sanctuary on some land that we've been gifted in the Himalayan mountains in India, northwest India, by my adopted family, who I've been a part of their family for almost 30 years now. I stumbled across them in another chapter of my life when I was barefoot, dreadlocked hippie wandering around India for years, smoking weed and asking the big questions. And I found this family back then in my 20s, lived with them, became a part of their family, and have been ever since. We run our retreats from their temple. They gave us 2 acres of land. I straight away had the vision to build a non-profit education sanctuary where we will channel the money through there to fund the education of kids in the villages, the local villages, which we already do. We built a small school there before COVID, and we're doing it on a small scale, but I'm wanting to help them on a bigger scale. But the programs that we will run through the Centre of Love, and then the Centre of Love hubs, we're going to sponsor the building of Centre of Love hubs in existing infrastructure around the world. We've already got sites and that's happening already. I'll get to that bit in a sec. But the programs that we're going to sponsor for very senior leaders is going to create a truly transformational experience for them, and then give them the tools to take back to their sector. So the head of the Department of Education, California, or the head of the Department of Health, Victoria or Australia, come through our program. Then they go back with the AI-assisted love pro forma that we teach, the gentle curriculum, for them to go back and embed into their sector. And this is getting to my high mission of why I'm here, to help be a catalyst and remind people in the workplace that their true value, and this is very important in the next 5 years, that their true value is in their human-to-human relational abilities, right? In our connection, in love, bringing love into the workplace. I love what I do, or I love the people I serve, or I love the outcomes that I get to be a part of, right? Bringing this back into the workplace. That's my global bigger mission. I'm out there raising 5 million over the next 3 years to build this vision into reality. I've brought together 12 founders of global movements fueled by love, and it's called the Centre of Love Alliance. And I'm weaving these worlds together so that we can be a tide that lifts all the boats. So an example of the Centre of Love Alliance, one of the members has built 7,000 schools in India and put more than 7 million kids through school in India. He's one of my members in this alliance that I've formed. Another one, she lost one of her sons in the Sandy Hook massacre in America 13 years ago. And when her son was murdered, she started a charity called Choose Love, which is a love curriculum for kids in primary schools, and it's been downloaded in 132 countries around the world for free. And I know these two people. I'm like, oh, wow, you've got a love curriculum for kids and you've got 7 million students in India. That's a no-brainer. You two should meet. So that's an example of the 12 founders, they're global, that I've brought together, and we're weaving worlds to work together to positively impact 150 million lives in the next 3 years. So that's the bigger kind of vision stuff around the non-profit, and my for-profit feeds into the non-profit because I don't want to go asking for money every year. So it's going to be a self-contained ecosystem. I run high-ticket retreats for high-net-worth individuals that are bespoke and private. There's enough of a margin there for me to channel that fund into the non-profit and sponsor the education programs that we're running for those, public servant leaders. So there you go. But you asked.
We were meant to know each other. So Sincerely has a very similar mission and very similar structure, where the revenue generating side will fund the Sincerely Foundation,
yes,
which is dedicated to unlocking human potential through love.
That's great. Oh, that's so great. Yeah.
And we could go off on a tangent and brainstorm.
We will.
So
we will.
much together.
Do you know what I love? I love that our synergistic divine connection and our worlds weaving together right now is happening to be shared publicly. It's going to be available for people to witness and listen to the moment when there was a spark of two worlds coming together that will positively impact humans.
And I will add to it. So within Sincerely, there's the Sincerely Foundation, and then there's Sincerely the podcast, salons, retreats, etc., which will be revenue generating. And then there's another pillar called Sincerely Human, which is the research and publishing arm. And so through my own lived experience, I've documented models. And I like and I don't like models. yet I'm dyslexic and I'm visual. So the benefit of models with the human word and with love can create a visual that adds to one's ability to digest. One of the models is the coherence model. Uh-huh. And the word coherence has really only come into my consciousness in the last 6 months.
Yeah.
And I describe the collapses that we go through in life. And it's the hero's journey. And we're going to talk a little bit more about your life in a second. And how those moments where our physical ego or our lived experience ego get crushed to the point that we have the potentiality to meet our soul. And it's at the bottom that happens. And, I first called it the ascension model, and then I called it the coherence model. But I have this other model called the three self model, which is the three selves together get us to coherence. And it's, we live in an extractive, performative world. We're taught to perform within this extractive system that humanity's been building for several thousand years. And we're conditioned from childhood to fit into that world and perform. We're not taught to be. And what's interesting is so many people that are showing up in my life, many of which are from either North American indigenous roots or India.
Right.
Where this more, not extractive, but regenerative and coherent way of being is available to us. And I describe the 3 layers of self as the essential self expressed through the physical and inherited self through our lived experience self. And it's the inversion of the world we're taught. The world we're taught doesn't recognize essence at all. It tries to teach you to perform through lived experience with some acknowledgement of your physical self or your inherited self.
Yeah.
It's the instrument, but it's all about lived experience self.
Yeah.
And the pathway to wholeness is, and coherence, to your point, is when we can actually reconnect with essence. And that's what I love about your life, Jem, is that you are, when you say you're going to do this till you die, it's because you're living from coherence. You're living from your essence. It brings you joy because you found what calls you and what speaks to you at the deepest level. What a gift that you've given yourself, and what a gift that you're giving others. And the vision to multiply it is profound. So what the heck got you here? Tell us about your childhood, and then we'll step into a few of those collapses that happen that cause us to find ourselves or enable us to find ourselves. So go back in your life. Where did this all begin?
My dad was from Leeds in Yorkshire in England. And he was many things. He was, for all intents and purposes, he was a good man. He really was. He was a good man for a lot of people. He was also a somewhat secretly tortured man as well. But he was doing his best, and who knows what sort of experiences he had as a child, and the stories that he made meaning from, etc. But anyway, so my dad was from Yorkshire. My mum was, many generations white Australian going back to Scotland and Ireland, and she grew up in a small little country town in Australia. And my dad was working in the oil fields and came out here and swept her off her feet, this young girl, and and took her off around the world. And they were living all around the world because his work was taking them all around the world. And so I happened to be born in Haarlem, which is not too far from Amsterdam in the Netherlands. In Holland is where I was born. And then I spent the first year of my life in England. And then when I was 1, Mum and Dad moved out to the outskirts of Melbourne, Australia. And when we first moved there, they built a house on a block of land that was in horse paddocks and orchards. Now they paved paradise and put up a parking lot kind of thing, you know. It's now another suburb of the very expansive city of Melbourne. But when I grew up, there were horses and, you know, dirt bikes and BMXs and, you know, outdoor fun stuff. And I was lucky, you know, Dad started his own business. He was an entrepreneur. He started his own business, and he did really well when I was growing up. When I got a bit older, there was financial crises and, you know, other really hard things. And, you know, that's his journey. But my childhood really I was very lucky. I was the oldest of 4 kids. We were surrounded by a lot of love. There was a lot of love. But there was also Dad trying to figure out this thing called life. And as with all of us, he was perfectly imperfect. His alcoholism gradually became more and more of a thing. A defining moment for me, and I didn't realize how defining it was at the time. It was only through deep, deep work as an adult that I could have, with the benefit of hindsight, look back and go, wow, okay, that moment was a defining moment. When I was 6 years old, Dad used to discipline us physically, but in a very controlled way. He would never lose it, but he would hit us, but in a very controlled way. But this one time he did lose it. He completely lost his temper. I was 6 years old, and I remember being absolutely terrified because I could see the look in his eyes, and he'd lost control. And he picked me up and threw me around the room and hit me and stuff, and then left the room, and I was a mess. And then he would always come back after disciplining me. He would always come back. It felt like hours, but it was probably only half an hour after the fact. He would always come back very calm and sit back down, and he wouldn't apologize. He would explain why he'd been angry, and he'd get me loving him again, you know? And then he'd leave, and I'd be furious that I loved him again because I wanted to hate him, but I couldn't help but love him, right? But what happened for me when I was 6 is my age of innocence ended. So up until then, I was in the age of innocence. That happened, and the man on the pedestal, I didn't know this at the time, but I started to develop the very common human limiting belief that I'm not enough. I'm not good enough.
Yeah, I'm not good enough.
I'm not good enough for the man on the pedestal. If I was good enough for him, he wouldn't have hurt me. So that's when I started my relationship and my sense of subconscious identity of I'm not good enough. And then I understand this now, but I didn't through my life, that then we start going and seeking evidence to back up our belief. So then begins the stories of sabotaging your own success because you don't believe you deserve it, or falling in love with someone who is evidence to you that you're not good enough because they always point out to you your fallibilities and where you're not enough, and so on and so on. And so that was a defining moment. Another really defining moment for me was when I was 17, 5 days before my 18th birthday, in my final year of high school. My best friend, my closest friend, had an accident on his motorbike and was in a coma. On my 18th birthday, I was sitting by his hospital bed, and he was on all the machines that keep you alive. And 5 days after my 18th birthday, the decision was made to turn off the machines. So my best friend passed through. I now know it's passing through, but died, essentially, is what we call. And so that was massive for me. And halfway through my final year of high school, I realized that I did not want to be a part of the rat race, the game, all the institutions, everything. I became very anti-establishment, and I've always been very peaceful, so I was never a violent punk. I was a peaceful punk. Can I swear on your podcast? Can I use? Yeah.
You effing right, you can.
Good. So I was in a peaceful, hippie kind of way. Fuck the system. You know, and as soon as I finished high school, I managed to finish high school but I drank my way through the second half of my last year of high school because my best friend had died and I was grieving, and I just drank my way through. But I was very bright and I still managed to pass. I did reasonably well. But as soon as I finished high school, I was gone. I moved to London. This was back in the days when it wasn't called a gap year. It was just called fucking off and getting out of the system. And I lived in squats, and I was an actor and a singer-songwriter, and it became more and more punk, and I was wearing mohawks, and I was getting my food out of dumpsters, and I was like, I'm not playing that game, you know? And then that developed into... I flirted with addiction in terms of, the normal way of addiction, which is drugs and alcohol, but it actually turned into an addiction of travel and immersion into very foreign culture. So I wasn't interested in traveling to Canada because Canada's like Australia. I wasn't interested in traveling to America because America's like Australia. I didn't want to spend much time traveling in England because it was the same as home. I wanted to travel to India.
It was another system. It was
another system. 100%.
Yeah.
And so I traveled around the world and went into cultures that were as different to mine as possible. And I would earn money as a fire dancer or a tattooist or a tribal tattooist. I didn't use machines because that was also part of a system. I tattooed by hand. I taught kindergarten.
I don't have any tattoos. So you can, when we meet in person, you can give me my first tattoo.
First one. It would be an honor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So lots of different things. And that was all through my 20s and into my early 30s until I became a dad. So that gives you some context on the thing. So I grew up in what looks like from the outside a very normal family, and I was very lucky. It was quite safe. But every kid has their own experience of some sort of trauma. And then for me, it was rebellion. And I wanted to rebel against my dad. And my dad was very conservative. He was the secretary of the church council, and he was the secretary of Rotary, and he did all beautiful community service stuff. And he was a beautiful, good man, but tortured at home. And like I said, more and more of an alcoholic. And I didn't want to be him. So he was conservative, so I went radical, was piercing my ears and getting tattoos and mohawks and everything I could to be not conservative. And then before he died young at 65 of a brain tumor. Before he died, we had beautiful reconciliation. And it wasn't through deep conversation because he lost the ability to be able to talk. He had a glioblastoma in the frontal right cortex. And so he couldn't have nuanced, emotionally intelligent conversation in the end, but he could look me in the eyes and tell me that he loved me and I loved him. So we had our beautiful reconciliation before he died. But yeah, it was, I am very much a reaction to my dad, like a lot of father-son relationships. And I'm very grateful for that. I'm very, very grateful now with the years of practice of meditation and unconditional love and compassion, which is daily practice for me, that I love my dad unconditionally, and I wouldn't wish for him to have been any different. I wouldn't change a single thing. All the tough stuff and all of it has been a part of me becoming who I am, and I love myself. So, yeah.
Beautiful. We have more in common. Not being good enough, fear of losing love, not being lovable. In my book, Sincerely Katherine, I describe the death of my best friend at age 26. Uh-huh. And I now know that it's because of our soul connection. And I am now 30 years later, more than 30 years later, I am now at peace with his death. And he's come to me through my meditations and different guides that I've spent time with. And I have soul cried from a soul cry is from the belly, from the deepest spot. You don't need oxygen to soul cry.
Yeah.
The loss of him through different healings. So what happened? You talked about 20 to 30s, and here you are, beautiful spiritual practice. You found wholeness, coherence, love within self. What was the shift? What occurred traveling different cultures? You mentioned India. Was there a turning point, Jem? Was there a turning point? Was there a collapse or something that created that turning point for you?
Yeah, there's been a couple of turning points, and a point is not a switch that's flicked. It's a period of time.
No. I don't mean, yeah.
Yeah. So for me, both of them were deaths of identity, ego deaths. And the first time it happened, I didn't know what was happening, and it was pretty scary. I was 27, turning 28, and I was engaged to a girl. We were teenage sweethearts, and we'd been together since we were 19. We got engaged. We never got married. We were together for 7 years, and so when we were 26, living in London, our relationship ended, and that was my first experience of broken heart. And then it became an experience of an ego death, a death of identity, because I wasn't her partner anymore. I didn't want to be an actor anymore. I'd lost touch with my family, my fault. I was one of those traveling sons who never told them where I was. So all of the relationships, the vehicles that I'd identified with weren't there anymore. I also, the recreational use of drugs started to creep in at each end of the week and become not recreational but addictive, and started to become a problem. Not just party drugs either, hard drugs. And then my angel was my sister. She showed up in London and saw the state that I was in, and reminded me that I was in London saving up to get back to India again, because I'd run out of money and I need to earn money. So I was in London earning money to get back to India. And she reminded me of that. And she said, "Hey, I'm going to be in India, in December. Why don't you meet me there?" And so I got my act together and saved enough money. Yeah.
Were you acting still?
No, I'd just given it up. I just let go of it being a thing. So I got to India, and then ensued one of the most profound years of my life. And I ran an experiment at the start of this year. I sat there. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. No idea really who I wanted to be, or where I was going to go, or even how to identify myself. When you meet people and they go, "Oh, hi, what do you do?" It's the first thing people ask you, and I didn't do anything, and I didn't know. And so to answer that question, I just used to say, I just travel. But I was very ideologically staunch about not being a tourist. I didn't want to just show up and take photos of people and leave. I wanted to immerse myself in their culture and understand them. So I wouldn't stay anywhere for less than a month, and I would live very simply. So at the start of this year, I let go of all design of the future and all sense of identity. And I just it was a very spiritual year. And I would wake up in the morning, and if I felt to move on, I would pack my bag and I would walk to the train station and get on a train. And if I didn't feel to move on, I would sit there and drink tea and contemplate. If people asked if they could travel with me, I would respectfully say no. I mean, obviously you can get on the same train as me, but I'm traveling solo. This is a mission, a spiritual mission that I'm on. And it was for years. But this one main year in India, and the flow state was stunning, and it was very spiritual. And I got to experience glimpses of a journey towards enlightenment. I don't think enlightenment's a destination, but you have moments of experiencing as consciousness the complete connection as the field, right? Before identity comes in and starts to create separation. And I got to experience that a lot. And the flow state was incredible. The journey, and even things like I had a very, very serious motorcycle accident. Which then ensued into a miraculous healing up in the Himalayan mountains. And under a different context, people would have looked at that and said, "Oh, what a tough time, what a hard time." The whole thing was divine. I mean, I experienced the whole thing as a divine path through this journey. You
also got to heal.
The healing.
Some of the most profound healers on the planet.
Yeah, it was a really stunning experience. And so that was what I realized then with that death of ego, was that your ego, when your ego dies, you don't die. In fact, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to reinvent, to redesign, to consciously choose the qualities of, who do I choose to be, and how do I choose to be in relationship with myself and others. But I was still quite young. I was only 28. So I tasted it, but my hero's journey wasn't finished. I don't think it even is still, but I still had to go and get lost in the dark forest. So I became a dad, and I went and got a job because I had kids to feed. So I went and got a job. I put on a suit and tie and went and worked in the corporate world. And everyone who knew me was like, who are you and what have you done with Jem? I'm covered in tattoos. I had stretched ears. I could stick my finger through my ears, right? I was very alternative. And then all of a sudden I tidied myself up and cut off my dreadlocks and put on a shirt and tie and did this thing and hid my tattoos. And everyone's like, oh my God, who are you? But I was doing it to feed my children. And I spent 8 years in this corporate world. And when I did that, I did it quite well. I ended up in very senior leadership. My business that I'd bought into, the section of this global company, was turning over $150 million a year. I had 150 staff and yada, yada, yada. And I got lost in that game. I lost my way, and I know that I had to, but I lost my way, and I was working very, very hard, making great money, flying business class around the world to all the conferences, and then doing all the cocaine and booze and champagne and craziness as well, that old chestnut. And I lost my way, and I lost my integrity. I lost connection. I became incoherent. I lost my way in terms of my values. I still managed to always be a good dad. I still managed to come home and change nappies and cuddle my boys and read them to sleep at night. But out in the big wide world, I really had lost my way. And so then came the second opportunity, death of ego, and people call it a midlife crisis. I was in my early 40s. For me, it was a midlife awakening or a midlife remembering, but I had to lose everything again. So I lost my job, lost my marriage, lost our house, gave away all my possessions to my then wife because I didn't want to fight over material stuff. And I walked away with $100,000 of debt and my 2 boys. And that was, when was that? That was 14 years ago. And since then have been rebuilding again, but in a really beautiful, conscious way, creating daily habitual practices of self-love, a very spiritual practice, and my work. And that has all led to me now knowing why I'm here and knowing what my bigger purpose of service is beyond being a father and a partner, what my service to the outer world is. And, however you want to measure impact, go for it. I don't mind. That's not the point to me. The point is, how is it for me in this day, waking up, feeling completely clear around why I'm here and how I want to help others. So there you go, Katie. There's a bit of a snapshot.
Wow. Wow. From your 6-year-old experience, that loss of naivete and innocence, to the loss of your dear friend, which I can relate to both, candidly, to your sister being your angel. I have 2 angel sisters as well.
Yeah.
At 26, to the big awakening in India, yet the trappings, and I don't mean trappings in a negative way, but the responsibility to provide for family. You fell in love, you had children, you felt responsible.
Yeah.
And I can do anything when I feel responsible. So you became a corporate leader.
Yeah.
Because you felt responsibility.
Yeah.
And the divine had a plan for you, that wasn't where you were supposed to stay.
Yeah. I forgot to give you one key part because you asked for turning points. So I just wanted to interject, Katie, because this is important and it'll help you get the bigger context. So I shared with you that when my dad was 65. He died of a brain tumor. So
Yes.
when we found out that he had a brain tumor, my youngest brother, so I'm the oldest of four, my youngest brother was living in Canada, working with his wife in Canada. And he found out that Dad was dying, and he said, Mum, I'm going to come home so that we can all be together as a family and do palliative care at home for Dad. And he said, Mum, I'm coming home because I want to live with you after Dad dies, just to help you through the grieving and the transition. And Mum said, that's lovely. That'd be beautiful. Thank you. So Tim, my youngest brother, moved home. We did the palliative care with Dad at home. It was actually a really beautiful, stunning passing, death of this physical body into whatever's next. And 4 months later, Tim, my youngest brother, on his motorbike, died in a head-on accident instantly on his motorbike 4 months after my dad died. So my mum lost her life partner and the youngest of her four kids. Tim was 30 years old. And he was one of these stars that shines its brightest before it expires. He was a bright, shining star, global, beautiful man who people adored. And he was one of my closest friends, my youngest brother. And he died instantly. And that one really hurt. That really, really hurt. You know, losing someone from the generation above kind of makes sense, even if they're young, but it still feels like the way it's meant to be. To lose your youngest sibling feels out of whack. It just doesn't, it's jolting, it's jarring, it's traumatic. And it was so painful. And that was 16 years ago yesterday. His anniversary of his death was yesterday, 16 years ago. And that happened, and that was part of leading me into this midlife catharsis when I was 40. So that was an important part of it for me.
Of course it would. Of course it would. You're in the corporate world, not coherent, not whole and complete, performing in this extractive world.
Yeah.
Doing your best to perform. And it wasn't sustainable on its own, yet you experienced the shock of a life, the loss of your younger sibling, a loved one. So what happened? Like, what happened when the marriage, the job, your brother, so you experienced multiple upsets at the same time. And I can relate. My marriage was over. My kids had left home. I left a 37-year corporate career. I had no hobbies because I was a corporate executive, and I had aloneness. So people would think that when I was suicidal before I came out and I chose to live, that would have been the ultimate collapse. The ultimate collapse didn't happen for me, or at least my largest collapse didn't happen for me for 3 more years. I hadn't grieved the thousands of stories that people told me about hurt and hardship. I hadn't grieved my kids leaving home. I hadn't grieved my divorce. And I now gave up my work family that loved and embraced me when I came out. And so I had aloneness for the first time in my life, experiencing my biggest childhood trauma, which was a fear of abandonment, a fear of rejection. I had aloneness with self. And for me, it meant grieving for 4 to 6 months. Eventually, I met Michael Singer and the book Untethered Soul, and I met Joe Dispenza and started meditating to Joe Dispenza, and eventually I met Joseph Jawolski and the book, the Synchronicity, the Inner Laws to Leadership. And I learned to trust the flow of life. Like, what happened after these upsets happened? Like, how did you find your way back to this somewhat of the path that you had found in India? What steps did you take? What happened?
So an important event that happened was I'd been sitting in a men's circle around a fire in the bush down here on Wadawurrung land, is the indigenous country where we live. And this group of men, a few of them had been trained in North American Indian sweat lodges and practice. And so someone had the idea for us to have a sweat. And this sweat ended up being profound for me. It was a very hot sweat. And we went in, so there was, I think there was probably 10 of us men. And inside the sweat lodge, it's pitch black. You're all naked in the dirt. And it was a very hot sweat. And I had an out-of-body experience. I ended up flying, and it was a joyful experience. I ended up flying around as a 5-year-old. And the man who had been bestowed the responsibility of being my guide and making sure that I was okay, after hours and hours, and all the other men had left the sweat, they'd finished, it was time to get out, sit around the fire, and then finally my guide put his hand on me and he said, "Jem, shall we join the other men?" And I came back into body and I crawled out. And it was amazing. I was 5 years old and I was flying around. It was my age of innocence and it was light and playful and wonderful. And I came back into body and we crawled out covered in mud, naked, and sat around the fire. And then there was this lake nearby, and some of the men had started going down into the lake to wash the mud off and under the full moon, and they were naming themselves, and it was very serious. "I am standing bear. I am flying eagle." It was very sincere, but serious, and heavy. And I was I was feeling light and 5 years old, like, la. And I ran down into the lake and I dove into this cold water. And I jumped up naked out of the water and I named myself and I said, "I am Naked Wet Boy." And I thought it was hilarious. And a couple of the other men laughed and a couple of them were upset because they thought I was making light.
Belittling. You weren't.
Yeah,
you were
like
just
making light.
You were experiencing,
anyway,
so I went home. Ultimate joy.
Ultimate joy. So I went home from that sweat. Back to my two boys. My mum had been looking after them. I can't remember where my then wife was. She wasn't there. I went home. Mum went home. I now had my two boys and they were, I'm going to say 4 and maybe 3 or 5 years old, something around there. I went to bed. They were asleep. I went to bed and I started to have this prophetic, shamanic, deep work dream. And in this dream, there was a serpent that was living in my core, or right up and down the inside of me, this serpent. But I had to get this serpent out of me. And I was trying to get this serpent out of me. And it was one of those dreams that was as real life, super, super lucid and visceral. And I was reaching my hands down my throat and grabbing onto this serpent and trying to get it out. And every time I pulled this serpent out and would let it go, it would slither back into me again, like it wanted to get home. That was its home, and it was, at one point I put it out and I kept my mouth closed so it couldn't slither back into me, and it slithered up my leg and up my anus and up into me that way, right? It was just determined to get back into my core. And Katie, halfway through this dream, one of my boys was unsettled, toddler, unsettled, and I needed to get out of the dream, go in and settle my child, but I knew the work in the dream wasn't finished. So I stayed half dream state, half awake, went in, settled my child, went back to bed, got back in, and consciously went back into the dream to finish the work. Then in the dream, I needed help. I needed community. I couldn't do it alone. And so these faceless men appeared around me, brothers. And these men came, and together we got the serpent out, and we managed to find a way to keep the serpent out of me. When I woke up that morning, straight away I sat up right in bed and I immediately knew, wow, that serpent was the belief that I've been growing inside of me since I was 6 years old, that I am not enough. And it's time for that belief to be out. And I'd never read any books about being good enough or any psychology. Didn't know it all came to me. And I knew that I needed to shift the neurology and the biology of the trauma and the belief that I wasn't good enough. And guess what happened? The first book that came to me, and a friend literally came past my house the next month and said, "Oh, you should read this book, Joe Dispenza, Evolve the Brain." Right? And I read that book and went, I can change my neurology, I can change my beliefs, So that set me off on a journey. And so to answer your question, in a very rudimentary way, repetition, rolled my sleeves up every single day. I am enough. I am enough. I am good enough just the way I am. I am good enough just the way I am. I'm enough. I'm enough. I'm enough. That was my first practice. It ended up being coupled with meditation and other practices and other self-work. But initially, it was just high repetition. I thought, I'm going to brainwash myself. I'm going to run the neurology that I'm enough over and over and over again until I believe it. And for the first 6 to 12 months, I didn't even believe it. But eventually, I started to believe it. It started to quote unquote wire together. And I started to believe, of course I'm enough. I'm enough to be me. I don't need to be more like anyone else. I just need to be me, and I'm enough to be me, blah, blah, blah. So I started to believe it, and that's when my life started to change. That's when the marriage had to end. I got kicked out of my job, blah, 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 blah. All of that happened. And as I started to really believe that I am good enough and I do deserve everything that life has to offer, that's when Tahlia showed up, not before. You know, to circle back to our conversation around my consciousness being ready. So that was an important part of it. That sweat lodge that night was a massive pivotal awakening for me.
Here we are sitting with Jem, from the 6-year-old that innocence was shaken, to the loss of your friend, to the ego death at 26, to the beginnings, the real acceleration of an inner, deeper journey in India and learning to let go, and a miraculous healing journey to, I've got to fit into the system. I finally got to fit into the system and it not working. And the job and the marriage and your brother, to another collapse, yet this time a real collapse. A real awakening through the sweat lodge and the dream. And finally, healing from the serpent.
Yeah.
And realizing, Jem, that you are more than fucking enough.
Yeah. Yeah,
and being okay with that. And as the Course of Miracles book describes, you are always perfect, whole, and complete.
Yeah.
You are always perfect, whole, and complete. And here you are with the gift of a soulmate and the love of your life and a family that has come together in the most beautiful way. And the energy, you're each, I'm not sure you're two halves. I think you're each beautiful wholes, complete humans that have found a way to radiate your light off of each other and amplify your individual wholeness through each other. And here you are doing such beautiful work in the world, and you've built this ecosystem, this self-reinforcing ecosystem, from your retreats to your coaching to the mission of love and the center of love. Like, what a beautiful, beautiful place to be after such a heavy journey. And I think why I replayed your journey, Jem, is, and I'm sure I miss pieces, is if there's anybody listening to your story that has experienced any one of the collapses of your journey and has contemplated life being over, Jem's living proof that the best is yet to come if you hang on. If you hang on and you go inward, not outward, and you grieve and you grieve and you look for your soul and your essence, and you look to release the serpent. Don't give up. You're going through what you're going through to awaken you to your true essence and your gift to humanity and the world. And Jem, that's what you're living. So as we wrap this, as we bring this, I think I know what your hope for humanity is, but I want to ask you one more time. What are one or two messages you want to leave our guests, given the life journey that you've been on? And what is your, not even hope, what is your knowing for humanity?
My knowing for humanity is that we are expanding as consciousness continues to experience itself through materialization and actualization into the illusion of the 3D world, that as this happens, we are evolving and expanding as consciousness into more and more love, which is the essence of where it all came from anyway. And I understand that the journey through fear is important. And I understand that a very tiny minority of very powerful people are caught in a trap of exploiting fear to create dysfunction and dystopia. But I know that as a collective, our true essence of love, i.e. kindness, care, compassion, connection, oneness, togetherness, I know that true essence continues to rise above and beyond the surface, and that we come, with the help of AI, even interestingly enough, come to a place of abundance and understanding how to share resource, that we don't need to live in scarcity anymore, that we move beyond the throes that we're in globally right now, which is like a kicking and screaming tantrum young child before they come into a place of peace, right? Mm-hmm. But I know that we are evolving in this way, and I've got no attachment to the outcome, by the way, but I do wake up every morning completely convinced that the goodness and the love will continue to come together through this beautiful mycelium network that we're all a part of, and will rise to the surface. So that's like you said, my hope and my knowing, and it's what drives me every day to be a tiny part of that, and a big part of that as we are all connected together.
I know it too. I know that 8 billion human beings have love inside of them.
Yeah.
Have love inside of them and can find their way to self-love.
Yeah.
And to love of others, and to be able to move past the fear that keeps being flashed in our faces every day. I know too. Jem, you are a beautiful, beautiful soul. I love you already. I honor you. I join you on this mission, sincerely joins you on this mission. Thank you so much for your time with us today.
Katie, thank you so much for having me on your show, and above and beyond your show, it is truly divine to be connected with you, and I'm excited about the amplification of Sincerely in the Center of Love, and how we're going to continue to help each other help everybody else.
Yes, thank you, Jem. Thank you for being here for this conversation. This is exactly why the Sincerely Show exists, to witness real human stories of individuals that have dedicated their life to service and contribution. Stories of people who have walked through darkness and heaviness and found their way back to themselves, to their deeper selves, towards a place that is more whole, and again, to a life of service and contribution. My hope is that something in what you just heard helped you feel less alone, more hopeful, and perhaps closer to meaning and purpose in your own life. This is a judgment-free space. If something moved you, inspired you, or sparked a reflection of your own, I would genuinely love to hear it. Share what this conversation opened in your heart. That is the kind of exchange that makes this community, the Sincerely community, what it is. It's what makes Sincerely, genuinely Sincerely. What I ask is that we hold each other with the same love and kindness that brought us here. This is a place of curiosity, not criticism, of witnessing, not judging. If you are sharing, share from your own experience and from a place of love and kindness. That is always enough. If this conversation resonated with you, please share it with someone who you'd like to hear it. That is the most generous thing you can do, not just for the show, but for the people in your life who are quietly looking for this, looking to feel less alone, for hope, for meaning, for lessons. And before we close, this conversation is for reflection and perspective only. It should not be relied upon as therapy or professional advice. Please always seek qualified support where needed before making any decisions based on what you heard here today, or heard or observed at Sincerely Overall. This content is also subject to our full terms and conditions, which you can find on our website at sincerelyinc.com. Thank you again for joining the Sincerely Show. Until next time, please take good care. Thank you so much.